A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back once again to HJN Season 5. So this point here, Honest J Nowak is more than proud to present more animals worth talking about on this channel. There's a good amount of which that I hadn't really talked much about, but I have since come around to them. The next option that I have here are alligators for number 2797. Now, I know that this is not the only particular animal that correlates to these certain species of reptiles. After all, there are the relatives known as the crocodiles. And there's also many others out there, like the Gustavs and the caimans and many others out there. Even those extremely rare albinos, which I feel like I could probably talk about in the first episode or maybe another episode of which. Either way, we're mostly going to be talking about alligators in this exact instance. So, let's get started. Alligators are, for the most part, a rather abundant species throughout most of the southern portion of the United States, mainly from Louisiana to Florida. After all, they are incredibly abundant in those areas, as well as many other surrounding areas that are overlying the south because of one major factor: the nice, warm, humid, and pretty wet temperatures. After all, heat and water are the two big things that certain reptiles like alligators and crocodiles are known to really indulge themselves in the most. And a good amount of other cold-blooded reptiles out there, some lizards, some iguanas, and a good amount of others out there are known to greatly inhabit the South as a result of this. I could probably tell you more times than not, in the 9 times that I visited the state of Florida so far, I've practically lived in that state by this point. But every time I've gone down there, I could not begin to describe how many instances of reptiles just showed up. The hot weather is one thing, but the massive reptile invasiveness just screams a lot. Worth talking about here. But in terms of the alligators, I feel like that some people might confuse them with crocodiles, but I will explain the main reason why they're different species. The biggest distinguishment between both species of reptiles. Here's the thing though, alligators are indeed a pretty formidable level of species. Quite a big predator, if you will, as many of them are known to be over a dozen feet long, depending on what species in particular we're talking about. After all, like many animals out there in the world, the alligators, as well as their relative crocodiles, are known to have a lot of subspecies in particular. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, there's also the case of the albino, in which that their scales are more white instead of brownish or greenish. In some instances, they happen to be more darker colors, almost black. But regardless of what the color is like, for their unique scaly skin, as well as their unique bumpy nose, their unique lip structure, which gives them a more distinct smile, if you will, and lots of crazy teeth that, when they clamp down on top of you, it's slightly worse than a bear trap, crushing your leg. So, they do tell you about the wild, and the fact is that many of the wetlands, swamps, marshes, bogs, etc., rivers that gators are known to hunt around in and play a little game of hunter versus hunted. So you could say that while alligators might seem pretty frightful and rather formidable, sometimes they're actually not as bad as one might expect. In fact, some instances of people encountering them in the wild, like tons of other animals, they tend to come out in one piece, not only because of the fact that they treat them with great care, but also known when to back down, if and when necessary. But as we know, you can't always trust what's going on out there. Just take it from somebody who has had a lot of survival experience over the years. I learned to make fires, I learned how to catch fish, I learned how to purify water in a number of different ways. I learned how to create my own housing from scratch. Man, that's not something worth bragging about, but it's also not something worth keeping a secret from. At the end of the day, though, alligators are one of, if not the most predatory species of reptiles in existence, and they're also some of the largest. It's also important to note that ancient ancestors out there, known as the Sucus, yeah, even Ark Survival Evolved could tell you a thing or two about how crazy strong and huge these guys are. I mean, the Sarcosuchus, for instance, holy crap. You would not want to come across a reptile of that size, at least 30 feet long, in comparison to the typical 10 to 12 feet long. Pretty much all depending on what goes on. Either way, though, these guys are not something you want to mess with. So, that's pretty much it for this piece. But I'll spend a bit of tomorrow talking a bit more about the crocodiles as well as other species relating to the gators entirely. So, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side if you want to see more on this channel.